On my engagement day, my uncle tagged everyone, my family on a beach vacation. Caption: finally together again. My mom's text earlier had said, "We're not feeling up to a party." I said nothing. That night, I canceled the mortgage autopay. 6 days later, my dad stormed up my driveway. I walked outside and declared, "I don't really have a family anymore. Not the one I was born into anyway. My name's Joseph. I grew up in northern Georgia, just outside Marietta. Middle-class suburb, cul-de-sacs, cookouts, all that. I used to think we were close. My mom used to bake cookies for my teachers. My dad taught me how to mow a lawn at 10 like it was some sacred ritual. My sister and I used to build forts out of couch cushions. It all felt like a normal family, maybe even a good one. But I see it differently now. They didn't all turn on me at once. It happened slowly, in subtle ways. When I moved in with Kayla, my fiancée, 2 years ago, they acted like I was betraying them. My mom called it brushing things. My dad told me I was making a mistake. My sister said I was selfish, that I only thought about myself. But still, I thought they'd come around. Then came the engagement. Kayla's parents were thrilled. They took over the planning for the engagement party and told me not to worry about a thing. We rented out this beautiful hall in Roswell. Live music, full bar, plated dinner, the whole deal. Everyone got invites months in advance. My family all RSVP'd. My mom even messaged Kayla's mom saying how excited she was. Then the morning of the party, I got a text. "We're not feeling up to a party today. Hope it's lovely." I stared at it for a full minute. No one else followed up. No call from my dad. No text from my sister. I remember telling Kayla maybe something happened, a health scare, a car issue, something legit. I told her not to worry. The party went on. Kayla looked stunning. Her parents made a toast that left half the room misty-eyed. People were laughing, eating, celebrating. And then my phone buzzed again. It was Facebook. My uncle had tagged my entire family in a photo. My mom, my dad, my sister, even 2 of my cousins. All of them grinning under a beach umbrella, drinks in hand. A cheesy stock filter over the photo. The caption hit me harder than any insult they could have thrown. Finally together again. They'd gone on vacation. Together. During my engagement party. I didn't say anything. Not to them. Not even to Kayla at first. I just sat in my car after the party and stared at the dashboard. That night, I logged into my bank and canceled the mortgage autopay. The house was still in my name. The payments had been going to help them. I didn't tell them. I just cut it off. 6 days later, I saw my dad's truck pull into my driveway. He didn't park. He rolled up like he was still in charge of something. I met him outside before he could knock. I didn't yell. I didn't ask questions. I just told him, "You're not entitled to me anymore." He stood there blinking, like he was waiting for the punchline. But there wasn't one. That was the moment everything cracked. And it didn't stop there. I figured I'd hear from someone eventually. I just didn't think it would be that fast. It started with my sister. She texted me a few long messages the next morning, nothing too surprising at first. Just her usual way of talking when she thinks she's got the moral high ground, a lot of fake concern layered with quiet jabs. She said the beach trip had been on the calendar for months, that I should have known we weren't coming, and that I was being childish for reacting the way I did. She even ended one of the texts with, "You know how dad gets when he's under stress." Like that excused everything. I didn't respond. Not to her, not to my mom, not to the half-hearted "Hope everything's okay" email I got from my aunt 2 days later. I let the silence sit. I let it grow. It was the only honest response I had. But Kayla's parents weren't wired for silence. They invited me over the next evening. When I walked in, it felt weirdly formal. Gary and Denise were already sitting at the dining table. Denise had a manila folder in front of her, and Gary had 2 glasses of iced tea. I thought maybe it was going to be some gentle conversation about moving past it, some awkward parental suggestion that I extend an olive branch, or whatever. I sat down. Gary pushed one of the teas toward me. Then Denise opened the folder and laid out a handful of printed photos on the table. They were from the engagement party, but not the ones we posted. These were raw, unfiltered. Faces in the crowd. Guests whispering to each other. a few staring awkwardly at the reserved signs on the empty chairs we'd put out for my family. One of Kayla's college friends visibly mouthing the words. "Where are they?" Denise looked at me and said, "That wasn't just your name they embarrassed." I looked at Gary, thinking he'd be more neutral. He wasn't. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "They made a statement by not showing up. So now it's our turn." The next morning, Denise called my mom directly. She didn't tell me exactly what was said, but I gathered the tone from how quickly things escalated. Denise doesn't raise her voice, but she also doesn't leave room for counter-arguments. She told my mother I wasn't her little helper anymore. That I wasn't a backup husband for when Dad didn't want to deal with things. She told her I didn't owe them anything, not money, not favors, not time. And then she told her the mortgage would stay unpaid. My mom hung up without saying goodbye. But that wasn't the end of it. 3 days later, Gary and Denise pulled into our driveway with something big on a trailer. I was out front watering the shrubs. Kayla had just gotten home from a meeting. We both turned at the sound of the truck backing in. That's when I saw it. A brand new Cadillac XT6. Midnight blue. Still had the sticker on the side window. Big red bow across the hood like something out of a car commercial. Denise stepped out of the truck and waved at us like it was just another Sunday. Gary unhooked the trailer and said, "You'll need something decent to drive to the wedding venue walkthroughs." I just stood there. I didn't even touch the keys when he handed them to me. Not at first. It wasn't about the car. It was about what the car said, about loyalty, about showing up, about choosing your people. Later that night, Kayla's mom told us something that stuck with me. "You don't have to beg anyone to treat you like you matter. Not when you already do." I wish I could say the gesture was private, but it wasn't. We live in a quiet neighborhood. The Cadillac sat in the driveway like a trophy. My mom saw it before I ever said a word. I know because 2 days after that, my sister showed up at the pharmacy where I work. No warning. No hello. She just marched up to the counter, red-faced, and asked, "Are you really okay taking handouts from Kayla's parents now?" I looked at her and said, "Handouts usually come with expectations. All they've ever asked is that I be happy." She stared at me, trying to figure out what to say next, but I wasn't interested. I told her, "You all made your choice. Now live with it." She stood there for a second too long. Then she turned and walked out. That was the first time I really felt the shift. The first time I realized I wasn't just mad. I was done. And I wasn't the only one. Because Denise and Gary were just getting started. The silence from my parents wasn't quiet, it was calculated. They didn't reach out after the car. No text, no call, not even a sarcastic comment on Facebook. My mom went dark on social media entirely for about a week. Then she reappeared, posting a photo of a seafood platter from some beachside place in the Keys with a caption that said, "Peace and quiet is the best medicine." It didn't take a genius to read between the lines. They weren't just ignoring me, they were pretending nothing had happened at all. Meanwhile, Kayla's parents were doing the opposite. The Cadillac had barely cooled off before Gary started talking about our future. He sat me down one morning with a thick folder and said, "You and Kayla shouldn't be starting married life in debt. You've worked hard. You've earned more than what they've given you." Inside the folder was a proposal, a full down payment for a new house, no strings attached. Not a loan. A gift. Kayla cried when I told her. I didn't. I couldn't. It was like my system had run out of the emotional bandwidth to react. I just kept thinking about how I used to send my parents $600 a month to help with bills. How I paid their property taxes 3 years in a row. How I co-signed the car my sister totaled last summer. And all of that got traded for a beach photo with umbrella drinks and passive-aggressive captions. So when Gary and Denise offered the down payment, I didn't feel guilty. I felt like I'd been rescued from something I hadn't even realized was drowning me. Still, I knew accepting it would pour gasoline on the situation. And sure enough, it didn't take long. 2 weeks after we signed the paperwork for the new house, my parents showed up. Together. No warning. They parked across the street and walked up like nothing was wrong. Kayla answered the door, saw them, and stepped aside without a word. My dad started in right away, asking what this house was, how I'd managed it, who was really paying for it. He didn't ask with curiosity. He asked like he was trying to catch me in a lie. My mom tried a different tactic, saying they were just concerned and wanted to make sure we weren't being taken advantage of. I looked at both of them and asked a single question. When was the last time either of you did something for me without expecting a return? They didn't answer. I asked again. They both stayed quiet. So I said, Kayla's parents show up. That's the difference. Then I walked back into the house and closed the door behind me. That night, my mom posted a long, vague status about losing your children to controlling families, and how some people forget where they come from. My sister liked it. My uncle commented with a Bible verse. I didn't reply. I just kept moving forward. And that's when Denise and Gary decided to really draw a line in the sand. They sat me and Kayla down and told us something we weren't expecting. They were setting up a joint trust for us. Not them. Just us. To start our life, to build something solid, something ours. And they made it clear, in plain terms. You two are our family now. We're all in. It felt good. But it also hit something deep in me, that part of you that still hopes your real family might show up someday, even when they've proven they won't. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't just generosity. It was war. And it wasn't over yet. I didn't think they'd go that far. After everything, the beach post, the confrontation, the car, the trust, I assumed they'd back off, maybe go back to pretending I didn't exist, licking their wounds in private. But that's not how my parents work. Silence from them never meant surrender. It meant plotting. The letter came 3 days after Gary and Denise finalized the trust paperwork. Real envelope, handwritten address. No return label. Just Joseph, in my mom's signature cursive. That weird, wedding invitation kind of handwriting she always used when she wanted to seem composed. I read it in the garage, sitting on an overturned paint bucket, the overhead light flickering like something out of a movie. The letter wasn't an apology. Not even close. It was polite, structured, like a conversation that had been rehearsed. She said there had been a lot of misunderstanding lately, and that they'd like to reconnect and have an honest conversation over lunch. She made it sound like we just had a scheduling conflict. Then she dropped a line that I had to read twice. We've been hearing things about this new trust. Just want to be sure everything you're doing is really in your best interest. Don't let people buy your loyalty. You still have a real family. Buy my loyalty. I don't know what she thought that would do. That I'd feel ashamed for being treated with respect? That I'd run back to the people who couldn't be bothered to show up to a party thrown in my honor? I didn't even bring it up to Kayla. I knew how she'd react. I just folded the letter back up and stuck it in the drawer where I kept old receipts and expired coupons. But Denise found out anyway. Not from me, from my dad. He called her. Said he was concerned that I was being misled. That Kayla and I were young and impressionable and needed to understand that real family doesn't come with conditions. Which, coming from him, was basically performance art. I was in the backyard when Denise took the call. I only heard the tail end through the sliding glass door, her voice sharp, deliberate. If you want him to come back, try being someone worth coming back to. I thought that was it. Until a few days later, another letter arrived. This one from an attorney. My parents were filing a claim. A formal demand for repayment. For shared assets and family loans. They listed everything. The down payment I'd gifted them 5 years ago. The car I co-signed for my sister. Even some random kitchen appliances I'd ordered for them when they renovated. They were suing me. Over things they couldn't have paid for without me in the first place. I stood in the kitchen holding the letter, and for the first time in this whole mess, I couldn't laugh. It wasn't even the lawsuit itself. It was the pettiness, the deliberate rewriting of history. They'd taken everything I gave and flipped it into a debt. Kayla didn't say much at first. She just read the letter, then looked up and said, "Good. Let them try." Gary took it even further. He called a lawyer he'd known since college, a sharp, quiet guy who didn't blink twice when we explained the situation. He said we had more than enough for a counterclaim. 2 days later, we filed back, not just to defend, but to collect. Full mortgage reimbursements, unpaid car repairs, and damages for harassment. I thought that might finally shut them up. But my parents weren't out of cards. They'd skipped the engagement party, but they RSVP'd to the wedding, and that's where things took a turn I never saw coming. We kept the wedding small for a reason. After everything, the engagement no-show, the lawsuit, the insults, Kayla and I just wanted peace. Her parents handled every detail like pros. We had a venue on a hill overlooking the lake, sunset ceremony, family-style dinner, live jazz trio instead of a DJ. There were 62 people total. Every single one of them had earned their seat. Except 2. A week before the wedding, we got the RSVP envelope back from my parents. Checked. Will attend. Nothing else. No note. No call. Just a pair of printed names dropped in the middle of a day that wasn't meant for them. Kayla didn't want them there. Denise wanted them banned. I told her I wanted them to come. Not to reconcile. I wanted them to sit in the back and watch something they had nothing to do with. I wanted them to feel like guests in a world they'd abandoned. Let them feel how far they drifted. And so they came. Late, of course. 5 minutes before the ceremony. They walked in together, like a divorced couple trying to keep up appearances, both in black. Not even subtle. My mom in some high-collar thing that looked like a widow's dress, my dad in a wrinkled sport coat and sunglasses inside. Like he couldn't bear to look at anything clearly. They sat in the last row. No one greeted them. A few of Kayla's cousins whispered to each other when they walked in, but no one said a word. I didn't even glance in their direction. The ceremony was perfect. Kayla was radiant. Her vows made the officiant pause. Denise cried. Gary looked like he was watching his own daughter walk into a better future than he ever had. I felt something I hadn't felt in months, stillness. During dinner, I noticed they were gone. Quietly vanished before the cake was cut. Not surprising. But then a server came up to me, a girl named Leah, I think, and handed me a small white envelope. Someone asked me to give this to you. Said not to open it till you got home. I knew exactly who it was from before I even looked. We got home around midnight. Kayla was upstairs brushing her hair, still humming one of the songs from the dance floor. I sat in the living room with a glass of water and opened the envelope. Inside was a folded note and a check. The note read, "Returning what you think we owe you. We won't be contacting you again." That was it. The check was for $28,000. I stared at it for a long time. My name printed cleanly at the top, the amount written in that stiff, careful handwriting my mom used when she was trying to be emotionless. It wasn't just a number. It was every dollar I'd ever given them. The house payments. The car cosign. The credit card I'd paid off when my dad maxed it out during the pandemic. They'd added it all up. To the cent. And sent it back. I thought I'd feel relieved. Liberated. Like some massive cord had finally been cut. But it didn't feel like that. It felt like a divorce. Like they'd turned our entire relationship into a balance sheet, squared it off, and walked away without so much as a signature. Kayla came downstairs and found me still holding the check. She sat beside me and asked, "What are you going to do with it?" I said I didn't know. Because I didn't. I wasn't mad. Not anymore. Just empty. There's a kind of sadness that comes when you realize someone truly has no interest in fixing what's broken. They'd rather pretend it never cracked in the first place. They didn't just give the money back. They gave me the final word. And somehow, it still felt like losing. But I cashed the check anyway. Because I wasn't going to throw away the only honest thing they'd ever done. And even if I didn't have a family anymore, I had Kayla. I had her parents. I had a new house, a new start. Sometimes, that's what healing looks like. Someone slamming a door. And you deciding not to open it again. After the check cleared, it was like they never existed. Not a word. Not a whisper. My phone stayed quiet through the holidays. No Thanksgiving texts. No passive-aggressive family group thread with screenshots of pies or my sister's dog in a Halloween costume. Christmas came and went. Kayla and I spent it with her parents in Colorado, snowed in, making soup and watching old movies. It should have been peaceful. And it was. Mostly. But there was an ache I hadn't expected, not for them, exactly, but for the idea of them. The version I used to believe in. The one where parents came through for you, no matter how messy things got. The version where families fought and forgave, not fought and filed. The first year after cutting someone off is strange. You keep catching yourself reaching for a connection that isn't there anymore. I had a habit of calling my mom when I couldn't remember an old recipe. I stopped myself 3 times in January alone. Kayla would catch me staring sometimes. I'd just say I was thinking. Which wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either. The truth was, I kept waiting for something. Even though the letter had said, "We won't be contacting you again." I half expected my mom to break. She always did eventually. But she didn't this time. And neither did my dad. Then came the moment that sealed it. Kayla's parents invited us to their lake house for Memorial Day. Just a quiet weekend, grill, boats, maybe a couple of friends. We went, stayed in the guest room like always, and the first night, after dinner, Denise brought out something wrapped in tissue paper. She said it was for us. Just because. I opened it and sat there staring at it. It was a key. A real, polished brass house key. To the lake house, Gary said. Figured it was time it belonged to more than just us. They were putting the deed in our names. Not right away, they'd still use it for another couple of years, but they wanted us to have it. To pass it on someday. I didn't know what to say. I tried to protest, to tell them it was too much, but Denise just shook her head and said, "You've already earned it, Joseph. You just had the wrong people measuring your worth." That night, while Kayla slept next to me, I lay awake thinking about that key. And the check. And the envelope I never sent back. I could have written something. I could have responded, tried to have the last word. But I didn't. Because silence is also an answer. A few weeks later, I got one more surprise. My sister mailed me a box. No note. Just a cardboard box with 2 of my childhood trophies, a baby photo in a cracked frame, and an old hoodie I'd left behind years ago. Everything else, all the gifts, the furniture, the electronics I'd bought them over the years, they kept. But the sentimental stuff? That got sent back. Kayla opened it and looked at me carefully. I just shrugged and said, "I guess this is their version of closure." And that was the last I heard from any of them. No big fight. No final blowout. Just a quiet, cold ending to something I thought was unbreakable. Now I have a new family. Not perfect. But honest. Present. Generous in ways that aren't measured in money, but in time, in presence, in loyalty that doesn't vanish at the first sign of inconvenience. It's a strange thing, being grateful and grieving at the same time. But I've learned that both can exist in one person. And I've learned to stop mourning what I never really had to begin with.